I'm a big fan of the Yakuza games. It is one of the greatest game series I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing, and it stands today, in my opinion, as a franchise of masterpieces that slowly but surely refine itself game after game, carrying on unflinchingly towards the peak of perfection while maintaining the solid formula that started it all. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then basically Yakuza is a series of 3D brawlers about tough but kind, sometimes criminal Japanese men beating the shit out of tougher, less kind, definitely criminal Japanese men, for a varying degree of reasons. Add an open world that is small but filled to the brim with details and minigames, plus JRPG style random encounters where people on the street can randomly want to rearrange your face only for you to do the rearranging instead. And yep, that's the Yakuza formula. And it's a good formula. And while today it may be easy to find and play a Yakuza game, it wasn't always this easy to be a Yakuza fan. Not to brag about it, but I am kind of an OG fan, starting back with the very first game on the PS2. Back then, we had to make online petition after online petition, request after request, to see if the next game would see the light of day in the West. Always wondering, whenever we finished our adventure, if that one would be the last time we would ever see of our beloved characters. A problem that just doesn't exist in Japan, where the series was massively popular and still is to this day. The cycle of anxiety culminated, damn it, with Dead Souls, which sold like shit, followed by major silence from Sega for a long as fuck time before Western Yakuza websites simply shut down without any warning, causing a panic in the fanbase that maybe this time this was definitely the end. I was, no joke, pretty sad about this, and ended up importing the 5th game from Japan because, well, fuck that bad vibe. I wanted to try continuing playing it with my rock as fuck Nihongo skills. Such was my love for this franchise. God, I probably butchered that word. Well, my bad skills at pronouncing Japanese words aside, eventually, luckily, the stars aligned for once, and we got Yakuza 5 on the West, which was followed by 0, which was a massive hit, and now there's Yakuza everywhere you look, even on PC, and every new game announcement is soon followed by Sega confirming that the title is getting localized to whatever language they want to this time, though there's always at the very least an English release. Which is what happened with this game, announced as Judge Eyes, Shinigami no Yugon, which translates to The Reaper's Testament, and holy fuck if that name ain't metal as shit. I was watching the conference where it was announced live and was hyped as fuck for a new IP from the celebrated studio that delivered Yakuza, keeping in mind that the last time Sega let them out of their cages, they produced the bedrock solid and pretty fun third-person shooter Binary Domain. It promised to be a dark, edgy, gritty and bloody courtroom drama, detective story mixed thing that would surely be the next great step for the studio, so imagine my surprise when gameplay was finally released and it was just a fucking Yakuza again. It's just fucking Yakuza again. It's the same fucking city as Yakuza. It's the same thing. God. Whew. Kept you waiting for the title card, didn't I? Well, technically Sega didn't let them out of their cages after all. And while more Yakuza is always good, I certainly expected something different, which mind you, Judgment delivers on. But you're gonna have to wait for that a bit for that part. For now, let's focus on the more superficial aspects of Judgment. A game about Takayuki Yagami, a tough but kind Japanese man who is not a criminal, who goes around beating the shit out of other tougher but not kinder Japanese men in a 3D brawler on a small scale open world, so yeah, basically Yakuza. The plot goes as follows. Yagami was once a rookie attorney that acquitted a guy accused of murder in Japan, where 99% of people that enter the judicial system for any reason are declared guilty. So you know, he's a hotshot cool guy following on the steps of big names like Phoenix Wright, before the guy he helped gets arrested soon afterwards for murdering his girlfriend, which is not good. Feeling guilty, Yagami quits being an attorney and becomes a hard-boiled, noir-style detective as a way of seeking redemption of sorts, though really just in fact running away from his dark past. He teams up with former Yakuza Masaharu Kaito, who is tough but kind, like usual, and who got kicked out of his clan after he fucked up. And together they just do normal private eye stuff like searching for cats and stuff until one day bodies start turning up in the dark alleys of Kamurocho, all of Yakuza who had their eyes gruesomely removed. Initially, Yagami investigates this case in order to help prove the innocence of a Yakuza member who got accused of committing the crimes, but eventually his own sense of justice compels him to hunt down the serial killer, which he nicknames the Mole, and before he knows it, he is involved in a deep web of conspiracy, having to make unlikely allies in order to take on powerful enemies and deliver the truth to light. It's a cool setup, and for a game that is as story heavy as this, shit needs to be cool. You will, after all, follow these characters throughout their journey for upwards of 20 to 30 hours for the main story alone, so it better be damn well written. While the gang's motivations and backstories are sympathetic and interesting, the main whodunit at the center of the story is kind of disappointing for a mystery-focused game. Sure, there are moments of gameplay centered around deductive reasoning, and sure, there's foreshadowing for the reveals that happen, but unlike other mystery games, plot twists and big reveals rarely ever happen when you as the player, or even Yagami as a character, put 2 plus 2 together. Gasping in surprise because the cat was the one who ate the pie all along, or something like that. Instead, Yagami corners a guy, beats the shit out of him, and the guy confesses to Yagami about what's actually going on. When that doesn't happen, some other guy ends up yelling what happened for other reasons, or the mastermind of a part of the scheme just shows up on a wheelchair, straight up like a motherfucking Bond villain wannabe, to explain his part of the plan. You get the idea. You don't get to deduct as often as I'd like them to deduct. You just kind of follow through the motions until someone explains the plot to you, and that's kind of disappointing. Yakuza habits die hard after all, and sometimes the easiest way for the writers to go through is to have you beat a motherfucker until he hands you the next plot point. Fortunately, the gameplay is still as fun and satisfying as it ever was. Beating up random dudes who think they can stand in your way is always very cool, and this time around you get to play with 2 fighting styles you can switch around at any time during combat: Crane style and Tiger style. Crane style favoring wide sweep attacks that can hit multiple enemies at once, while Tiger style favors dealing massive damage to a single enemy. It's a basic formula that makes sure your brain is still working and you don't just mash on autopilot by adding a basic formula. Did I just say formula twice? Well, anyway, by adding a basic formula you have to go through for maximum efficiency. That formula being, if multiple enemies, then use Crane style, and if boss battle, then use Tiger style. Though, to be honest, I ended up favoring Tiger style even when fighting multiple enemies, since the skill tree upgrades also favored it, and I ended up with a much more refined and powerful Tiger style at the end of the game, while Crane was, unfortunately, kind of pretty much the same from when I started. Another new element added to the game are Mortal Wounds. They are basically an amount of damage that is permanently dealt to your maximum amount of health whenever a boss uses a special attack, and can even be inflicted by common enemies if they use guns to shoot at you. The only way to heal them is with extremely expensive medical items or by visiting a doctor, and all of this serves to make you more engaged with battles and artful at dodging, since you can no longer just tank battles by carrying 1,000 energy drinks in your pockets like you could in the other games. When you aren't beating random thugs, you can do many things. You can take on side cases, which is detective work you do not related to the main story, or you can run around playing minigames that vary from playing various Sega's arcade games of decades past, to playing darts, and even entering virtual reality to play a very fucking simplified, yet still weird as shit version of a board game. It's based on Yakuza after all, and it just isn't Yakuza if you can't take your time to mess around with random things on the sidelines while your best buddy is bleeding on an abandoned building somewhere. We've got to have priorities after all. And on top of all that stuff is what makes Judgment actually different from Yakuza: the detective work. It's easy to dismiss Judgment as just Yakuza but with a detective gimmick, which is, not inaccurate, but it doesn't tell the whole story either, as I found out when I opened the brand new leveling up skill tree menu, only to find a whole section that is mostly dedicated to unlocking skills all related to detective work. It showcased just how much thought was put into the detective activities you'd have to do during the game, but more importantly, just how much you'd have to do of it. Tailing suspects, investigating crime scenes, and even lockpicking, you have to do all of that plus more, and a whole lot of it throughout the game. So if you just wanted a Yakuza game just to beat people up and watch tough Japanese men in long ass cutscenes, and maybe play some UFO catcher, then you might want to avoid this one, or else you'll probably end up frustrated by the sheer amount of slow burn activities you have to engage with in between brawling sections. Who I can recommend this game to, however, is people who want to get into Yakuza but are intimidated by the franchise's long and large history. Even if the detective work makes this game a different experience from the usual Yakuza affairs, it still is a good entry point, since it features completely original characters following a completely original storyline that you need no baggage at all with the series to understand. Plus, the usual tutorials and the extremely intuitive level up system of this game compared to some of the other entries make for an extremely easy to get into game. The only thing you'd have to worry about if this is your first entry is the common problem of all people who jump in at the latest entry of a series. The conveniences that exist on this one aren't going to be present when you begin to explore the series history backwards. But other than that, I personally think it's a great entry point. So, in conclusion, if you're a fan of Yakuza, there is definitely a lot to like here, and if you're new, it's the perfect time to jump in, so I recommend this game to pretty much everyone except people who can't stomach slow burn detective work in their punching people games. It's not perfect, but Yuga Gotoku Studio has, as always, pulled from their history to deliver an ever more polished version of their previous games. This time with an interesting and well thought out gimmick. And that's always a treat. Let's all just keep in mind the fact that where's the fucking PC port, Sega?